stripped and waxed these last week. This hallway. Stripped and waxed these last month. All they need is burnished. It's the office by Becky Anderson in the Hart Institute. Floor is here. You can see the reflection of the outlet there. Nice shine. They're doing some work on the side of the wall there. Hallway, East Tower 3 East. Working very steady, consistently. Bring them to this level. This is my inventorying tape. Follow up to show the progress. And there's our cameras that watch us all night. Break room. Seven o'clock Wednesday, night of our Christmas gathering in the food court. 10 o'clock tonight. At the middle ways down the hallway. The floors are very nice and shiny. Baseboards clean. There's Cameron and Antoine coming down the hallway on my nice clean floors.
How you taking pictures of your floor?
Into the hallway. Floors I stripped and waxed. Put 8 coats of wax on in the last 3 weeks. You can see where they've come from in the last 3 months on this whole stretch. See exactly.
For more than a decade, former Lee County, Mississippi Sheriff Harold Ray Presley made a strong imprint on Mid-South law enforcement.
When the highly decorated Presley was gunned down in a shootout with an alleged kidnapper more than 3 years ago, his death drew nationwide headlines. But Presley's widow, Charlene, now claims that within hours of his death, suspicions and retribution began to take their toll on the family. In a Fox 13 News I-Team report, Charlene Presley takes aim at what she alleges are the mysterious circumstances involved in not only the murder of her husband, but the subsequent death of her oldest child. Fox 13's Les Smith joins us live in the studio with his I-Team report. Les.
Hey, Merle, Steve. You know, nearly everyone agrees that former Lee County Sheriff Harold Ray Presley was his own man. Cut from a mold similar to that of the legendary Tennessee lawman Buford Pusser, Harold Ray's independent style endeared him to many, but vilified him to a lot of other folks. A dangerous tightrope act which his widow Charlene alleges some were anxious to see end in tragedy.
How many secrets
did former Lee County, Mississippi Sheriff Harold Ray Presley take to the grave. More than 3 years after his death in a highly publicized shootout,
but I knew it was not possible.
his widow Charlene alleges enough of her husband's secrets remain to make a lot of people very nervous.
I know that there are many people that know the truth. I'm not the only one that knows the truth by any means.
In a law enforcement career that spanned 14 years, 52-year-old Harold Ray Presley had attained legendary status in Mississippi. The 16th of 17 children, a first cousin of rock and roll king Elvis, a 7-time law enforcement officer of the year, Harold Ray was an icon among his peers, blending backwoods charm with a steely determination to dole out justice in his own unique fashion to friend or foe.
He was everybody's sort of best buddy, as long as you were abiding by the law. And if you were not, he'd get on that ass about as good as anybody you've ever seen in your life.
He was a strict sheriff, you know. He went by the book, you know. If you did something wrong, he didn't mind calling you in and bringing it to your attention.
And that is what's brought a lot of the trauma to us. It's because Harold Ray didn't cull anybody. He didn't care who it was.
But months before his death, Charlene Presley alleges her normally easygoing husband showed her a side of him she'd never seen. The delivery of a box to their home suddenly sent Harold Ray into a panic.
Don't take no package out of nobody's hand that's brought to this house. And he was just white as a ghost.
The appearance of the mysterious box was the first time that Charlene Presley had ever truly seen fear in the eyes of Harold Ray. In less than a year, it would be a foreboding of a tragic event that not even he would have seen. But as Charlene would later discover, the unexplained box was symbolic of Harold Ray's growing fear for his life. Threats so menacing, they apparently prompted him to secretly tape record conversations with informants.
Like one call that said, meet me out on Birmingham Ridge Road. I want to tell you something. I overheard a conversation. This man says he's going to kill you.
Mrs. Presley alleges just a week before Harold Ray's death, he divulged his further suspicions to his oldest son, Patrick.
He said, this is who has been stalking me. This is who I think was going to kill me.
On a sultry July morning in 2001, outside Saltillo, Mississippi, the specter of death would engulf Sheriff Presley. But the circumstances and his eventual killer would be thoroughly unexpected. A fatal chain of events began with the alleged kidnapping of a Tupelo woman by 53-year-old Billy Ray Stone. An hours-long chase of the suspect ensued, with Presley characteristically leading the pursuit.
He was a hands-on sheriff. He believed in working.
Stone was allegedly trapped inside a darkened outbuilding adjacent to the home of retired Tupelo policeman Bobby Norris. Norris would later tell the FBI Presley, along with Deputy Jack Tate, arrived first on the scene. Before being led toward the suspect, a sweaty Sheriff Presley fatefully took off his bulletproof vest.
Nobody was in the building but Jack Tate and Mr. Norris and Harold Ray and the man that killed Harold Ray, Billy Ray Stone.
Norris would tell the FBI the shooting began as he opened the door. Tate would tell authorities Sheriff Presley pushed him aside in saving his life. Both accounts, Presley's family has trouble envisioning.
We don't even think Harold Ray had his gun out of his holster when he walked in there, to be truthful with you. We don't think Harold Ray was expecting this at all.
Billy Ray Stone died after the shootout. How he died is still in dispute. 2 deputies were accused of beating him to death after he was shot, but they were acquitted. Charlene Presley alleges the hail of bullets which killed Harold Ray set into motion days of confusion and distrust, not only at the crime scene, but back at the Lee County Sheriff's Office as well, where case investigators from the Highway Patrol were already at work.
I called Miss Presley and reported that to her, that, you know, they was in the office, and they went in there 2 or 3 times, you know, and shut the door behind them.
They said they are tearing everything up in his office. They are taking stuff out of there by the boxfuls.
He had the power, and they was wanting that power.
As if from some Greek tragedy, Presley's widow charges the death of the larger-than-life Harold Ray sent his family into a psychological tailspin. A state of mind also aggravated by the family's failed efforts to recoup large amounts of cash the late sheriff allegedly kept on him, including money he may have had in his wallet the day he died.
He didn't deal with banks. He kept his money and kept a lockbox at the office, plus, at his house too.
$3,188 was what was in his wallet. And the day before, he told 2 employees he had $40,000 on him.
Perhaps none of Presley's 3 children took his loss any harder than his son Patrick, who Charlene says vowed to find out the truth about his father's death. A personal investigation Mrs. Presley emphatically believes marked her son for harm.
It said in Billy Ray's autopsy that he didn't have gunpowder residue on his hand. So Patrick wondered, well, who killed my daddy?
But less than a year later, Patrick faced his own crisis on the road to tragedy. In June 2002, Presley was arrested by the Mississippi Highway Patrol after a fatal 2-vehicle crash just outside Tupelo. Authorities contended under the influence of drugs, Presley had driven 20 miles on the wrong side of Highway 78 when he struck a Moorville, Mississippi woman head on.
The other vehicle in the accident, a lady and her child were in that car, and the lady unfortunately lost her life in that accident.
Found guilty of depraved heart indifference, the 31-year-old Presley was sentenced to life in prison. While working on an appeal, Presley's attorney, Jason Shelton, argued his client faced an uncertain fate if sent to Parchman Penitentiary.
That Patrick would face retribution in the prison system from people that had been arrested and convicted by the Presley law enforcement family.
Yet Shelton charges, despite assurances from state prosecutors that they shared his concern over Presley's well-being, Patrick remained mired.
Instead of Patrick being placed in protective custody, that he was simply put in a solitary type confinement and kept in a small concrete cell 23 hours out of the day.
9 months after his conviction, Parchman authorities say Patrick Presley hung himself inside his cell with bed sheets. He would later be buried next to his father.
I certainly wouldn't wish what they've been through on, my worst enemy. They've been through more than anybody should ever have to bear.
Murder, money, politics, power, and secrets. A volatile mix which tore Harold Ray Presley's family asunder. Yet for Charlene Presley, the search for truth in the death of her loved ones continues above ground.
Vengeance is the Lord, and he takes care of it.
Now, since her husband's death, Charlene Presley alleges she has been denied vital information on the investigation into Harold Ray's death by state and federal officials. Now, we contacted the Mississippi FBI and were told that while their investigation was complete, they couldn't divulge any information because it had been forwarded to the U.S. Justice Department. And no one in the Justice Department would return any of our phone calls about Harold Ray Presley's death. Les Smith, Fox 13 News, IT.